So Pete Carmichael is the last man standing from the original staff of Sean Payton in 2006. But that's not unusual considering here we are going into 12 years down the road. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv, the New Orleans Saints, making a bushel of changes this past week as their rebuilding process continues in earnest. And considering the lack of progress with their defense and special teams on the surface, you should not be surprised by the moves. But beneath the surface, you have to be surprised by the move with Joe Vitt. None of the others truly surprised me, frankly, even Coach Johnson. But the Joe Vitt move, considering he is the closest confidant of Sean Payton's, he was an interim head coach when Payton was suspended. He's the assistant head coach, and he's been by Payton's side every step of the way while other defensive coordinators moved on. That, to me, was clearly the biggest surprise of these moves. And I think it also makes a statement about the New Orleans Saints organization. Number one, Sean Payton's not going anywhere. Number two, this is an organization that's willing to look at all aspects to try to make it right. So, Brian, they've done everything but make changes at the top. Therefore, if nothing good happens this year, it's probably going to reach a higher level. Agreed?
Absolutely agreed. And you're absolutely right, Kenny. We have talked about it ad nauseum for several years that you could have made a case for both Johnson and Vitt to be gone based on how this defense has played over the last 3 to 5 years. I mean, we're not talking bad defensive. We're talking historically, catastrophically bad numbers that defense has put up. Now, and as I wrote for sportsNOLA.com, you can't lay the defensive blame entirely on Joe Vitt or Bill Johnson, but they are two constants in a particularly bad defense. Even this year, they still give up almost 29 points a game. So I applaud Sean Payton for doing, in my opinion, the right thing. I think these changes have to be made. And again, Kenny, you pointed it out so eloquently, is that, okay, now it's at the top. It's strictly at the top now. I wonder, seriously, I never thought Sean Payton was going anywhere, Kenny. I never thought he was going anywhere. So I'm going to just say that right off the bat. But Mickey Loomis, look within myself, look within, my friend, because look, you got to make sure you get some good personnel decisions made this offseason. This is a very, very big year.
When they brought in Kevin O'Day in midseason as a special teams coach, and when Will Lutz didn't miss a field goal the rest of the year, you kind of saw this coming with Greg McMahon. With Joe Vitt, you really didn't see it coming. And Ricky, I think more than anything else, this says that Sean Payton has given the keys to Dennis Allen and says it's your defense. You do what you need to do. Get your own guys in here. It's all yours. He's giving control to Dennis Allen. Don't you read it that way?
Well, I mean, my whole thing is, Ken, I know that Joe Vitt was one of his close friends, and you hate to get rid of a friend, in football. But the Saints feel like they're in a need that, they need some changes. But the whole thing is, I don't feel like Joe Vitt had the right tools to work with. I don't feel like the personnel was there. So that's kind of hard to, to point fingers at those guys, because I just look at the personnel wasn't there on special team, wasn't there on defense. So once you get the right personnel, then you can point fingers at those guys.
So as a former player and a former linebacker, is it a case of the Saints simply not having good enough players at that position or not developing players, which was Vitt's personnel responsibility?
Okay, they don't have the players there. Okay. So, I mean, I wouldn't put that on Joe Vitt. I like Joe Vitt. I think he's a great coach. And, him and Coach parted ways, and Coach still love him, I'm sure. But the linebackers, they just wasn't there. They wasn't no Ricky Jackson, Pat Swilling, LT and them. They didn't have those kind of players.
Well, there'll never be that group of players gathered on any team. That's my opinion. But I agree with you, Rick, to a degree. But look, Joe Vitt's been there for 11 years. Now, you name me a linebacker that has truly, truly developed. I'm going to point to one player as an example of where they have failed miserably. They trade Jimmy Graham to Seattle. They pick up a #1 draft pick. They get Stephon Anthony. Stephon Anthony does well as a rookie. Doesn't do squat last year. Now, whose fault is that? And then Sean Payton says about game 14 or 15 after Anthony has played relatively well, we haven't seen him on the field all season long. And all of a sudden he says, well, Stephon's problem is he can't distinguish run from pass. And I'm going, did you just say what I thought you said? Now, whose fault is that, Ricky? Now, that's either personnel or something, but you can't tell me that they didn't know that he can't distinguish run from pass, and you made him a #1 draft pick? Something's dreadfully wrong there. Okay?
Well, man, and Ken, this guy broke all my records as a rookie. So he know run and pass. He had 126 tackles.
I'm just telling you what the head coach said.
He made a whole lot of tackles his rookie year.
Yeah.
He made more than I made. So evidently he know run and pass, and he's a great athlete. So I wouldn't never say that. I would say that the system that they was running wasn't a system that fit him. What you have to do is put the guys in the system that they can run. You can't go get a quarterback and he never threw, ran the wishbone and try to make him a wishbone. Tom Brady couldn't run the wishbone. You got to play what the guys can play, and that's what they failed to do. You got to play what guys can play best.
So now you're putting it back. So now I agree with you. So now you're putting it back on
the
Vitt now.
scheme, on the scheme
Gotcha.
of defense.
Okay,
Right.
I'll buy into that.
Okay. Well, you look at all the changes that they've made in recent years. Ryan Pace left to go to the Bears. He took Josh Lucas with him. Rick Rieprich got fired as scouting director. They dismissed 2 other scouts, Adams and Hollern. They brought in Jeff Ireland to work in football matters with Mickey Loomis. They've changed defensive coordinators, 4 times? And Joe Lombardi left, and then he came back. They switched play calling duties. They've changed everything you can possibly change at this point. So really, it goes to the top now. And I'm not saying that to indict Sean Payton or Mickey Loomis, but because you've made all the other changes, it's on them. But here's the deal. They have a young nucleus in place, and there's finally hope for this team and this franchise to turn the corner if they can have another good offseason. I truly believe that can happen. I think they can win 10 games next year if they have a good draft again because they have some pieces in place.
It's a tough schedule. We looked at it last week. It's a tough schedule.
I don't know if it's all that tough. I think average, I'd say.
Competitive schedule, okay? And look, they did make strides on defense this year, and I'm not going to diminish that they were a better unit by season's end, okay? But the proof is in the pudding. You're still giving up 29 points a game. You're still not making key stops at critical times, and that is both scheme, personnel, and coaching.
Well, you got Jordan and Cameron. You got him a good defensive end. But you got to realize, you look at the secondary. I mean, the secondary is very weak. I mean, you can't put none of those guys, you got to have some Pro Bowl players back there. You got nobody back there Pro Bowl worthy. You got nobody in the linebacker Pro Bowl worthy. The defensive line, Jordan about the only one that Pro Bowl. You got one player that Pro Bowl worthy on the whole defense. So what you looking for? You know what I mean? And none of those guys not making a whole lot of money. So, I mean, and then now they got 3 or 4 guys from Canada now. They're trying to patch and fix stuff. But you got to get some top quality. You go out there with Julio Jones and all those guys, those defensive backs, they playing 10, 15 yards deep, giving up the outs and stuff. You need some guys that are going to challenge guys, and that's what they need.
But they've tried to address it. It's not like they haven't tried to address it. They've just made mistakes in personnel because they've drafted defensive players in the first round over and over again and in the second round. And they signed Brandon Browner and they signed Jarris Byrd. They've brought in people to try to fix things. This year they went cheaper and they did better. They brought in Craig Robertson, serviceable, solid player. Nate Stupar, serviceable, solid player. So at least they brought some guys in that were able to contribute. But you're right. Ultimately, regardless of who's running the show, you need players, and they have to get better. And they need a little bit of luck, too, because their cornerback position was absolutely decimated by injuries. One of the problems for the Saints in spending has been the salary cap issue, and they have been in bad shape over the last few years. Finally, they find themselves a little bit clear of the problems that they had as we look at the respective numbers. With cap space, the Saints are now moved down to like 11, so at least now they have some money to spend, which they haven't had in recent years as they get some people off the books from some of the bad moves that they made. So that's good news. They have some money. They'll draft 11th in the first round, so there's the potential to get it right. On paper, it looks to me, Brian, like they had a pretty good draft last year. They can do that again this year. They've got a shot.
Yeah, if you can hit on 3, 4 guys, 5 guys a year, you absolutely have a shot. And don't forget about James Laurinaitis. Here's the problem with they're marquee people where they go and make a big splash with. It's not like James broke the bank, but he was a guy that they were counting on to plug the middle of that defense.
And be their defensive captain.
Yeah, and take care of all the woes and problems that a captain middle linebacker should be in the Sam Mills vein. Well, he didn't do it, and you devoted a lot of time and space to him.
Final thought, Rick?
Well, I mean, I just think that they got to get better players. I don't care what you say. The bottom line gonna be you have to have better players to compete. You see, the Cowboys, when they got a great quarterback, when they got a great running back, you got to have better players. And the whole offensive line on Cowboys, like you said, their first round draft pick, a lot of them, but they got better players than the other people got. So that's why, that's what you need.
We would like to thank our sportsNOLAtv sponsor, Mr. Troy Duhon, and Premier Automotive Group for their continuing support. Today we're brought to you by Premier Chrysler Jeep Dodge. The Premier Automotive family continues to provide great service, affordable deals, and premier customer service. Premier Chrysler Jeep Dodge is doing more than giving fabulous deals on cars. They are giving hope and giving back to the community. When you purchase a vehicle from any Premier Automotive, you're then joining their mission and being part of the many missions Premier gives hope to. NFL playoffs when we return in a moment on WHNO.